All right, guys, welcome back. We are watching Koimonogatari, Episode 1, Hitagi End, Part 1. That is quite the title, huh? Hitagi End. So, first, my question about this arc is who is the narrator going to be? I guess you could say it could be Shinjagahara. I kind of think it's just going to be Araragi still. Because I was thinking about Shinjagahara, right? And it's like we've been having these arcs where we kind of go back to a character and we have like a, almost like a not really a finale arc for that character, but like, Tsubasa Tiger for Hanakawa, Hana for Kambri, that kind of thing, right? What I was thinking about is for Shinjagahara, does she even like need something like that? Right? Like she kind of, in a way, seems like the most like put together character, you know what I mean? So one, if she was the narrator, I think it would just be weird because like I just don't even know what her problem is anymore that we would be addressing, you know? So I'm kind of thinking this is going to be an Araragi arc, and I don't know what Hitagi end means. That's kind of a scary, especially because it's called Koimonogatari 2, love story, right? So I am really curious where we're going with that, I guess. So I think it's going to be an Araragi arc. I mean, I guess I could talk about Shinjagahara just in case beforehand, obviously. I mean, it's named after her, so I'm sure she's going to be in the arc at the very least, right? But no, really, Shinjagahara seems like the most like put together character. In a way, it was really Karen B that was kind of like her second arc in a sense, right? Her more so addressing her past in a way, right? Uh, and all of that stuff, like after they talked to Kaiki, had the conversation on the rooftop, all that stuff, So I really just don't even know what more needs to be done with Shinjagahara, right? Let alone, we haven't even seen her in like so long. When was the last time we saw her at all? I like Subasa Tiger. It's been a while. So either way, I guess I'm hype. I like Shinjagahara. She's cool, right? I'm down for it. So hey, we're starting Tagi End Part 1. You can line your own copy up with this if you want to. We are starting in 3, 2, 1. This is Kaiki music. I Are we gonna have a Kaiki narrator right now? Sure. Okay. We're having Kaiki narrator. I don't even. Okay, right. Of course. I should have seen that coming. Okay, okay. I will doubt everything, I suppose. Although him saying that, I don't know if I believe him. All right, all right. I like your house, Kaiki. Hmm. I wonder about this. Well, I guess I won't know the difference, huh? Serves them right, huh? Sure, I guess. Hmm. Okay, okay. End of second term. Okay, okay. New opening. Kaiki's got a car. Very good. Kaiki narrator. Like I didn't imagine in a million years. Okay, all right. The crazy. That's really weird, right? We're in an adult's head. Think about that. Like that's never happened before. That's for sure. No, it's even though he's an adult though, Kaiki's Kaiki. So even with like that beginning stuff there. Hmm. Oh, she's like unraveling. Man, this is a very cool opening. Yeah, like the swap back and forth between the old style and like new animation style. I don't know if you'd call it animation style, I guess, but a snake around a crab. Huh. Yeah. Hmm. Them inside of each other's heads. No, this makes sense though. Of course Kaiki would show up in a Senjugahara arc, right? Okay, okay, that was a really good opening, huh? God, what? 1st of January. Okay, okay, we're in Kaiki's head. Like what? Like what are we talking about? Okay, in Kyoto, he looks excited. Sure, sure. Oh, okay. I think is this what we're gonna be doing the whole time? Oh, right, right. He does love money. Hmm. Okay. I. All right. Thank you, Kaiki. I am I gonna have to? Are we gonna be doing this the whole time? I I doubt that's it. Unfortunately, the pursuit of maybes may be an endless task. Maybe. I guess. Oh. Okay. She is calling him a name like a deadly something. Someone I'd like you to deceive. Yeah. How shocking that has to be. Oh, it's Suzuki. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Of course. Suzuki and Sensho Gahara. Alrighty, alrighty. God, he's stupid. Hmm. I no, you aren't. Why does he do this? Why does he lie about everything? I guess he's very suspicious about this call, probably. Wow, she really needs to talk to Kaiki, huh? I believe it. Leaving this in your hands. Yeah, what a thing to say, huh? To leave something in Kaiki's hands. I, I guess. They both are just flying from completely different places to Okinawa. I suppose. I suppose. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why does she want to deceive someone? That's an interesting question for him as well. Really keeping it up. Yeah. Very must be very desperate, right? I something about victims. I gotta make sure I read that. Interesting. This errand bodes ill. Perhaps, perhaps. I'm loving the Kaiki music. Oh my god. Yeah, exactly. Come on. He's Suzuki. Childish behavior, huh? Yeah. How nice of you. How nice of you to show up at the airport just for her. Okay, okay, uh-huh. No, no, that would be insane. That would never happen. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, exactly. That's impossible. Yeah, no, just, the lobby in general, you know. Sure. That's really sounds like a good meetup plan, I suppose. Really buying him some time. Exactly, exactly. What? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's meet Senshogahara, I suppose. Like what? I guess that's her. That's Senshogahara. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's her disguise. Beaten in a competition. Oh god. He has his disguise too. It's like in the opening. I I suppose, I guess. Man, we're getting background characters. That's crazy. From Kaiki's perspective. Sure has been. It sure has been. The fact that Senju is able to talk to him like this, for one, again, it shows how desperate she is, probably, but also it's impressive that she's able to. Yeah, yeah. I maybe. I say yeah, yeah. Seems pretty vague. No human I cannot deceive. Well, we deal with more than humans quite often. Okay, interesting. Why? Yeah, exactly. I don't think he cares much about that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. I kind of get that. Okay. So it's not about her. I would understand why she would want to distance herself from that. What is he making up for then? You sure could. You sure could. It's yeah, you don't want to be on her bad side. Sure. I wonder if there's more reason why you don't just get up and leave though. Who and where do you want me to deceive? Sure. Yeah. Sengoku Nadeko. Of course, right? The snake in the opening. Yeah, 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 yeah. What a shot. So, okay, what is the deception going to be? Yeah, I'm sure Aragi would not be happy. He's likely to kill you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In a way. They also have some similarities, I think. I wonder what he thinks about that. Interesting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I something like that, I guess you could say, right? He's always studying. He's always studying. So, okay. Nautico wants to kill them, right? I guess we bought some time at the end of Otori, and that's what this is all about, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. If not, if we don't deal with the Sengoku Nautico situation, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. I suppose. Sure, that's a good yeah. What a shot of his face, huh? Very scary. Very ominous. Please do. Please do. We're dropping the Suzuki. It's getting serious now. Yeah. Really putting it all on Kaiki's shoulders. Oh, I don't think so. I think maybe you could be spared, not him. Man, and yeah, it's so close. It's January 1st now, you know. Of course, I'm sure. I'm sure that's the reason why you want to listen. Right, right. Ooh, Ningen. Yeah, yeah, no longer a human. Exactly. He said he can deceive any human. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. An odd disease. A strange affliction. Hmm. In a way. Sure. I don't know. Was Senjogahara a god? Maybe in like the thematic sense, you could say. The crab was a god. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess. Yeah, like we get shots of the shrine, and then he says that. I don't think so. Not really. No. I don't think people show faith in her. Yeah. It's like she made the god herself, you know? It was her own belief that did it. Yeah. Man. Not quite. Not quite. Oh, yeah, she was a victim of Kaiki's scam stuff last summer. Right, yeah. Yeah, because remember, she even said um, that Kaiki was the one who influenced her life like the most because of him, because of his weird scam thing. Yeah, 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 exactly. Okay, okay. Right, yeah, she didn't buy anything from you, but an indirect victim. I suppose. But we know about victims, right? I I suppose. Yeah. How morally upstanding, huh? Man, his face and hair can be all sticky. Come on. Don't treat me like a child. Sure, I can't really blame you, I guess. Uh-huh. Yeah, I suppose, indirectly. That is an interesting way to put it still. Sorry. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Although he's so sarcastic, but I don't know. I actually wonder if he does feel some amount of responsibility, you know? It's so hard to tell. Ooh. Yeah. When you first say the same line to the same person again. To save. And what would that mean to you to save them, you know? Interesting. What a shot in his head there. Completely different color scheme. I did not say that. I guess. You said he could deceive anybody, though. Any person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. We are up in the ante. There's nothing you can't deceive. Interesting. Do you have to say it like that? Like, come on. Is that necessary? Okay. Sure, sure. Of course. That's what it always comes down to. Yeah. He's not, man. If anything, I think this personally meaning something to him, maybe having some kind of emotional connection to this, might make him want to get paid for it even more, you know? Considering I think money, he uses it as like a way to emotionally distance himself. Right, right. Sure, well, Oshina's not around. Oh, yeah. I'm sure Kaiki is like the last resort. Oh, wow, really? I thank you. Thank you. I suppose. That's really the only thing we can say about her. Like, come on. Say she's awesome. Sure. Looking away. I think he can't, I think, right? This whole money thing for him. Yeah, he can't do that. He really can't. And I think he understands. Yeah. Oh, man, it's so cold, but that's like the point from his perspective, right? Araragi's, I'm sure she would say. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Huh. I wonder what he thinks about that answer. Hmm. I don't even. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Gotta really need some self-reflection, huh? Yeah, sure. Do I feel like it? Hmm. No. If you say so. If you say so. Probably not. You didn't know her. Literally. God, this is great. Oh, okay, okay. He really has to find some excuse for him to accept it, like, for his own emotional reasons, right? Yeah. Interesting. Why? Huh. Why is he like this, huh? I don't believe you, but sure. And yet, yeah, I suppose, I suppose. Sure, sure. Right, right. About Skihi, yeah. Like giving change. It's too big an ask. Oh God. Nice, yeah. Hanako is the key to everything, I bet. God, it's like he's so desperate to find a way to convince himself to accept it, you know? She's not. Why why does that come up like 3 times? Yeah, yeah. It's like he needs there to be something in it for him, you know? Oh, Konbaru. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. With which to remember Gaintoe. Okay, uh-huh, uh-huh. We're really connecting some lines here. Really, man, really stretching this. Uh-huh. Okay, uh-huh. Sure, yeah. Okay, I suppose. Right, right. What a shot. Oh, he's so like relieved that he found something. Your bitter enemies. Are they really your bitter enemies? I'm sure you can. Oh, that's the episode already? Man, okay. Huh. That was so good. I already love this arc. I love Kaiki. Oh my god, new ending. God, that was such a good episode. Kaiki is such a character, huh? Hawaragi, Kaiki, Oshino. Hmm. Like all 3 of them. Interesting, huh? Like those 3 characters, Araragi, Kaiki, and Oshino. They're kind of similar in a way, you know? Them being like alone here together like this. Oh. Oh. And here's everyone on the outside, you know? Sure. Oh, Hachikuji. Huh. I didn't really read the lyrics, didn't have time. Oh, Ononoki. No, I figure she must be showing up in this arc, huh? I really loved that ending. What's up, Fire Sisters? The last previews, they better not be the last ones. Maybe. Oh, never mind. A pie haircut. Okay, the age of ponytails. Uh-huh, uh-huh. I... Why? Mankind cannot win against nature. I suppose. Alright, alright. They're big. Okay. We will talk about the episode in the discussion. Okay, let's talk about the episode. I did not think we were gonna be getting Kaiki narrator. I probably would have been on the bottom of the list of characters I imagined that we would ever be getting narration from. But here we are, I suppose. And in a way, I guess it makes sense, right? We've always talked about, or we've mentioned at least, that the adult characters, they seem, in general, the adults just seem so much more put together, right? It's like they're like all the adults, most of the adults we've seen that have like been actual people in the story have been like specialists, right? And the fact that they're specialists, so they like know a lot about oddities and that kind of thing, right? That makes sense because like oddities representing all these problems, that kind of stuff. It makes sense that like adolescents, younger people would face those issues more so than older people who have like already dealt with them, right? But Kaiki is a little bit different because Kaiki is Kaiki, right? of all of the adult characters that's like actually part of the story that we've met, he is definitely the most uh I guess I don't know what the word for it is. He's got the most problems, I guess you could say, right? He does I guess he does kind of fit in with the rest of our narrators in terms of being someone who really has a problem that needs to be addressed, right? And I really enjoy what we do when we are from this different perspective of a character, right? We've done it every time with the other narrators, where it's like we can get so much more insight about the way that these characters' minds work when we're actually in their head and we're like hearing their thoughts and listening to like the way they actually think about things, you know? And I think that's no less true for Kaiki. Some very interesting shots in this episode. The ones of him, God, I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. But the ones of him like in the like there's all like the shrine gates around him and stuff, and like these shots of him like thinking a whole bunch. I think it was like right here, right? It was somewhere. It was before, yeah, like right here, right? Very interesting, like being in his head like this, and like the way he thinks in these moments is very very introspective and very interesting compared to the way he's always portrayed himself outwardly. I mean, it shows, of course, that the way he acts is very much maybe it's not entirely forced, but it's certainly not genuinely him in a way, right? Whatever you want to say, like the genuine version of someone is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really think it's fair to say it's forced exactly, but he is like, that's he has a very very strange attitude, and that's not just like the way he is, right? It comes from something, right? And we've talked about that before. His decision to decide to help Shinjigahara at the end of this episode comes back to he has this crazy line of logic. He leads it down, connecting it to Kanbaru, and of course he cares about Kanbaru so much because of Gain Toei, right? And I think Gain Toei, whatever happened between him and Gain Toei is, I believe, most likely the reason why he acts the way he does, right? I guess I get the sense that in some way he feels betrayed by her. I mean, obviously, right? Like he refuses to even call Kanbaru Kanbaru because he doesn't want to say that name, right? Which is, of course, the name of the person that Gantoe married, right? So I don't know if it's as simple as being him just feeling betrayed in terms of like love like that, right? This is called Koimonogatari. This is called love story. Just saying. But something with his relationship with Gantoe is what I imagine has shaped his mindset to make him act the way he does now, right? Okay, let's actually go through the episode in order. So we start here with an interesting monologue from Kaiki. Humans have a desire for truth, or they have a desire to believe that what they know is the truth. Sure, I guess those are kind of one and the same in a sense, right? There's what we decide is true can only be based off us believing that it's true, right? There's never like really an objective truth we ever reach, like science and stuff, right? We're kind of talking about science here. We're seeing, Nobel Prize and physics laureates, right? But like science changes and evolves over time, right? And it's not like the people who believed science before were like believing things without evidence or believing things that they shouldn't have because they weren't true. The evidence led them to believe those things were true, right? And I guess that's kind of the difference he's pointing out here, right? In other words, the actual truth comes second to that desire. I suppose, in terms of like what, it's more important to fulfill that desire rather than just what the actual truth is. But those are kind of one and the same in a sense, right? The truth, I guess, like the truth is only important because we say the truth is important. I guess that's kind of what he's pointing out here. Sure, sure. Be mindful of what is truth and what is a lie. In other words, always doubt yourself. Harbor an inner devil's advocate as you read along. And I won't forget to add that by that point you might have already fallen into my trap. Here's the thing about Kaiki. Does he actually lie that much? I guess he does. I guess in this episode he did lie a whole bunch, right? But it was like small things, right? And even when he acts like really sarcastic and stuff, I don't really know if it's him like lying in a sense, he loves to talk about how he deceives people all the time and this kind of thing, you know. But I feel like his real motivations for like his conversation with Sindra and Karen B, for example, right? There was nothing. He wasn't deceiving her there. He wasn't lying to her or anything. You know what I mean? Um, I think really his motivation for doing that was more clear than like even he himself like wants to admit. You know what I mean? And I guess my point is he wants to think of himself as this great grand deceiver and liar who tricks everyone. But I think he is so like transparently like a broken person who is clearly like his behavior and attitude is so like just clearly he's not like that, you know. Like when Sindra was asking him like, "Oh, you really aren't gonna help me?" and he was like looking away and like all of this, you know. It's I think he's bad at lying. I think he is bad at deceiving people. You know, so I don't know if I really believe him that he's gonna be weaving this big tale of lies about all of this, you know, because like if part of this tale of lies that he's going to be telling me in this arc has anything to do with like, oh, he was doing it all for money and all this stuff, well, he's already failing horribly at convincing me that that's his motivation for anything, right? So, like, money is just an excuse for him, essentially, right? It's like this thing he holds on to because it's like he feels safer to like distance himself from these things, right? Like the more Sindra begged him to help her with the situation, I think, the more he became convinced that he needs to get money for doing it, right? Because if he cares emotionally about the situation and cares about Sindra and all of this, that leads him to the possibility of like being hurt by it emotionally, right? Which again, I think goes back to Gantoe. Whatever happened between them led him to some serious, lasting emotional harm, and he now applies that to like every relationship he has with everyone, right? And money is kind of like the in between he uses for that, right? He says, "Oh, if I'm getting paid to do these things instead of doing them for these emotional reasons, it doesn't matter how it turns out. It doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how anything ends up, right? Because I got paid to do it, you know." Same with like Karen B, right? With like if we want to say that for any the reason why he went to I don't know what the town is called, I guess, the place where Aragi and Shinjigahara live, he could say like, oh, he just did it to scam all the middle schoolers, right? He did it to make a bunch of money from scamming them and like, you know, taking their pocket change, right? But we know the real reason I think he was there was the stuff about Kambaru related to Gantoe and talking to Sindra I think actually was important to him whether or not it was his plan, really, because Sindra is the one who hunted him down, but it certainly did end with that conversation with Sindra which I think was emotional for him in a sense, even if he would say it isn't, you know. But the excuse he uses is, oh, I was just there to scam middle schoolers, right? And he does that with money, with like every potentially emotionally situation, right? Now then, here's a tale where truth and lies intertwine, weaving in things that did and did not happen. I'm going to tell you the love story of Sindra Hitagi and Araragi Kiyomi. Weaving in things that did and did not happen. Like, I guess he could just make shit up, and I guess there would be nothing I could do about that. If he just starts lying, and just some of the scenes I saw in this episode just didn't happen, I guess Kaiki wins. But I don't really believe him. I don't know if that's gonna happen. It's, you know? I'll guarantee its quality, if not its truth. I hope from the bottom of my heart that there's an ending where every reader will say, almost because it feels like you could say that if this story is going to end up being emotionally significant to Kaiki, and it being like, you know, him making progress as a person and all of that, there's kinds of things he wants to distance himself from. This is kind of part of that distancing, him trying to like make an excuse and say, oh, maybe some of this didn't really happen, you know? I hope from the bottom of my heart that there's an ending where every reader will say, serves them right. Who are we gonna say it serves right? Kaiki? Aragi and Sindra Like, what do we mean? Like, I guess, because this line sounds like it's like a bitter end. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they got what they deserved, you know? Which could be about, like, Kaiki, right? Because, of course, certainly, by the time you watch this, I think it's pretty reasonable to not have a very high opinion of Kaiki, right? He certainly does do pretty nasty things, pretty often, right? So the idea of having an ending that makes you think, oh, that serves Kaiki right, you know, he got what he deserved, that would make sense. I don't really have that view of Kaiki, and I doubt by the end of this arc, anyone would be thinking that, but who knows? Who knows? I almost feel like Kaiki, I like that kind of attitude is what Kaiki wants to project, though. It's like he wants to be the villain in a way, um, which I'm not really sure how to connect that to his greater like problem related to like Gain Toei and his emotional attachment to other people and all of that. But it's so clear that like he has certainly has no problem playing this villainous role. And it's like he really wants to be, in a sense. I wonder if it's like, if other people view him in like this villainous light, if that makes it easier for him to not form like these emotional connections with other people that he's been like hurt by before. I don't know. I wonder. That is if I even have a heart. You do. That is if I even exist. I mean, I guess you don't, but like, you don't know that. Come on. Then, in a comical way, let's start the final story. This isn't the final story, but sure. Just kidding. Of course, this may be a lie to end of second term. So we're January 1st. So let's think about the timeline. So, okay. Let's piece it all together. So Kizu was in April. Bake was like after that. Like between like April and like July, the sort of like Karen B was just the events of Bake. I don't really remember the exact months where everything happened. Uh Nisei was like that summer. It was like July up to like early-ish August, and then second term started, which was like Tsubasa Tiger, Kabuki, Shinobu Time, all that stuff happened then. And then we don't really have anything until Nautico Medusa in October, and then this in January. And then, of course, Hana is like even later after this, right? Okay. So this is January. It's like this would be after Araragi having the conversation with Ogi after Hajikuji disappeared in the last episode, right? Because that would have been, I can't remember again. Was that November or December? I think that was December, right? So this is right after that. So, oh, that's interesting. We do need to remember, if we see Araragi, we really need to think about what his mental state is, right? Because again, at the end of the last episode, it really seems like he's not doing too well. So I hope we see Araragi in this arc, because I will be very curious to see what he's thinking, you know? Kaiki has an awesome car, so that's good. He's very cool. Um, this opening is really good. I really enjoy it. I didn't read the lyrics too carefully. I'm going to do that next time. Um, it like has this flash back and forth between like this old like art style for anime, and like new current at this time at least, anime art style. Um, which is very interesting. It makes me think like I normally don't dig too deep into like opening animations because it's like, it wasn't really made by the author. But I'm sure at the same time, of course, there's always meaning you could get from it, I'm sure, right? So it just makes me wonder, like, this kind of old style versus this new style. I wonder if that like means something for Kaiki. Like in a sense, right? Obviously, all the stuff with Gun Toei happened a while ago, right? Like before Kanbaru was born, right? So it's been a while. That's something that happened a while ago in the past. We're getting like this old anime art style. I just wonder if it's almost like this is, in a sense, it's like Kaiki almost addressing the past, if that's going to be something that happens in this arc. Because like we're getting these flashes back and forth between the past and the present, right? These shots of Shinjo Gahara, like with the old style and like the new style. It's like I almost wonder if in some way Shinjo Gahara reminds Kaiki of Gain Toei or something, or if like there's some kind of connection there between his relationship with Shinjo Gahara, and if in some way that is like through his relationship with her, if that means something to him with like his relationship with Gain Toei. You know what I mean? If like through helping Shinjo Gahara, if through all of that, if he will somehow find some kind of closure with what happened with Gain Toei. I don't know, I'm not sure, right? Because in Karen B, it seemed like his objective there with Shinjo Gahara, even though it was like kind of, it didn't really work. I think it was kind of a bad approach, right? When he told her, oh, there's no point in overcoming the past, all of that stuff. I think in a way, because that's like his attitude about things, I think in a way he was trying to help her out with her past, right? He's like, oh, when I dealt with this horrible emotional stuff, I decided to never deal with the past and wallow forever and just not address it. And he's like, oh, that's worked out great for me. You should try that too, Shinjo Gahara. So I think he cares about her. He genuinely does care about her in some way, right? Like, for sure. And God, and these shots of her, like, I wonder too, maybe you could say it's like some way he viewed Shinjagahara like before, right? Like I guess you could say this is like Shinjagahara from 2 years ago, when he helped her before, right? Like this like childish naivete that she had or something, before he came along and scammed her, because it's like the difference in her expression, right? She's so happy and smiling, and then it becomes this. So because it's like you can't help but think because of Kaiki's view on things like this, because of Kaiki thinking, because of Gantue ruining his mentality about everything forever. At least that's my perception of it, right? That's what I imagine causes his behavior. I wonder if he thinks that Shinjagahara has to be the same with him, right? That he imagines that his impact on Shinjagahara has to be that influential, has to be that extreme, and that somehow, that she is just as stuck up on everything that happened with him in her past as he is with what happened in his past with Gantue. Of course, I don't really think so. Um, Unlike him, she was able to overcome it, right? That was the conclusion of Karen B with for Shinjagahara. She was able to overcome her past in that way. And he isn't able to, right? And it's like you have to imagine, since he hasn't been able to, I wonder if he thinks it's possible for anyone to. Hmm. Makes you think about Hana too. The way Hana was all about running away from her problems, all of that. Of course, Kaiki was in that arc, and he's kind of also still doing that, right? The whole thing about never addressing your past. Of course. Heads. Very interesting. Hitagi End Part 1. I still have no idea why this arc is called Hitagi End. I am trying to think of why. Hitagi End. Surely Hitagi isn't gonna die. I mean, that would be the most insane thing ever if Shinjagahara died. I don't even. That would be really bad. That would be really rough for Aragi, huh? And for Shinjagahara, because she would be dead. But man, huh. We start off at a shrine in Kyoto. Absolutely. Bringing in the new year, January 1st. I was at a shrine on New Year's Eve to ring in the new year, except that's a lie. That isn't why. It was partially for fun, to observe visitors. See, this is what I mean. It's like, if Kaiki's telling us he's going to be deceiving us the whole time, well, every time he lies, he just tells us, oh yeah, I'm lying to you, by the way. So, I don't know. Maybe. Throwing away money, more important than their lives, as if it were nothing but trash. I came to a shrine to study the ecology of people of that nature. I suppose so. I think that line is still, even if that's not your reason, that is still an interesting line. Him thinking that money is more important than the lives of these random people. Because I guess, of course, he would think that, right? I think that makes sense. That story sounds pretty legit, but the actual reason may be completely different. I guess we don't really have a reason. Why is he here? Why did he come here? I guess it's impossible to know, right? That's kind of what he says here in a moment. This crazy line about how yeah, concerning me, the pursuit of maybes may be an endless task, maybe. Um, and I guess that makes sense with the way Kaiki is, the way he's so dishonest with himself and with everyone else. I guess it's always kind of impossible to truly discern his motivations for anything, right? That's kind of the problem, I guess, when you live the way Kaiki does, huh? And Senjo Gahara calls him. God, I really wonder what goes through his head when he picks up the phone and it's Senjo Gahara asking him for like help like this. Because like, of course, he could never imagine it, right? He could never imagine doing something like this, right? The way he refuses to say Komburu's name, for example, right? Like that alone is kind of an example of his inability to address the past at all, right? So Senjigahara being willing enough to reach out to Kaiki, who represents all this stuff for her, right? I think even more so in Kaiki's mind, he imagines he has more of a significant impact on her than she even does, right? God, I just wonder. There's someone I'd like you to deceive. So he has to make up a bunch of weird shit. My name is Suzuki. Suzu, as in a bell on a collar, and Ki, like giving a blunt answer. He does give blunt answers, that's for sure. It's not Shinjo Gahara, of course, it's Shinsho Gahara. Obviously. God, he's so silly. I don't know what this is. Sinsho Gahara? Is it like a river or something? I guess something like that. I was careless and started listening to her. Interesting. I was careless and started listening to her. Like just what that makes me think is like, oh, he thinks if he wasn't being careless, he shouldn't have listened to her. So like, it's the way he's always emotionally like on guard, that he should, because Shinjogahara is part of his past and what he thinks about the past, never addressing it. Of course, he should be so on guard and be so careful about not talking to her, I guess, right? Not becoming like emotionally connected to her in any way. That's what he wants to avoid. He changes her name in his phone to Sensho Gahara. That's great. That's great. I guess he didn't have her name in his phone before, so I guess he added her as Sensho Gahara, of course. How did she get his number? Anyway, I don't know. We need to go. We need to go to the airport because he lies that he's in Okinawa, of course. So we gotta go to the. Leaving this in your hands. What does he think of that, right? Unbelievable for someone to put that kind of trust in him, right? Hmm. Trusting another person, despite what they've done to you in the past, right? Unbelievable. It says, my regards. And we get the shot of him in front of the tree. Kaiki, so the tree, right? Araragi's a tree. We've had that comparison several times. And so it's like the first time Kaiki ever showed up, we had this talk about how if, he's a dead tree. So it's like, Aragi's a tree, Kaiki's a dead tree. There's this obvious connection between them in that way. I'm still not really sure what to make of it exactly, right? Because despite everything, I think Kaiki and Aragi are very different people. Maybe you could say that Kaiki is similar to Aragi from like Kizu, if Aragi hadn't changed and evolved so much as a person ever since then. Maybe you could say Kaiki is similar to him. In that sense, him being a dead tree makes sense, right? It's like Aragi if he had never grown in some way, right? I remember there was a comment a long time ago saying that something about Shinjogahara, like her name or something, had to do with like a garden, like a place for a tree to grow or something. It's like that's what Aragi's had, And Kaiki hasn't had that. But maybe it was her first name, maybe it was Hitagi had something to do with that. Something like that, right? But anyway, Kaiki hasn't had that, so he's a dead tree. Aragi is just a tree, right? Other than that, though, in terms of similarities between them, like, I guess you could just say the emotional detachment that Kaiki has and all of that. I guess you could say it's similar to Aragi's stance on relationships and like Kizu. It definitely comes from a very different place, right? Aragi was scared of relationships because of what they thought they would do to him. I guess you can say Kaiki is similar, because it certainly comes from an emotional place, but it's really from a place of, like, past trauma, right? Like, it depends on the specifics of what happened with Gantoe, I suppose, right? Like, if he regrets his relationship with Gantoe because he thinks he did something wrong, right? And that's entirely possible. Who knows, right? It doesn't seem like he blames Gantoe for anything. We just know the situation with her emotionally impacted him. Then that would certainly be very different than Aragi's stance on relationships in Kizu. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll get into that in this arc. In any case, had to fly down to Okinawa. Like, that's very funny how it shows. I guess you can kind of say this just shows how his way of living life, lying to people like this, lying to himself in a way, right? How it's pretty inconvenient, huh? You have to fly all the way to Okinawa. Would she, a girl whose identity I don't know, have someone that she wants me to deceive? Who would she want you to deceive? Interesting. I have to look at this with an inquisitive eye. Such a girl. I don't know who she is, but asking me of all people to be an accomplice in her fraud. I guess you could say him holding on to this idea that he doesn't know who she is so strongly is like kind of part of him trying to convince and almost deceive himself into helping her, right? Because he's telling himself, oh, I don't know who she is, she's just some random girl. Where if he thinks of her as Shinjogahara, who he has this emotional connection to, then he really wouldn't want to help her, because that's what he wants to distance himself from, right? I don't know who she is, but asking me of all people to be an accomplice in her fraud is the epitome of unnatural. Oh, here we go. These are the ones I really wanted to read. I've never fallen for a swindle. Okay, immediately Like, is that true? Is that true that you've never been deceived? You've never been lied to? That's never happened to you before? I wonder if that's true, right? That seems like cope to me. But based on what I've heard, victims don't change into aggressors. They usually stay victims forever, in my opinion. That is a very interesting thing to think. And I think that makes sense. There are a lot of similarities between Kaiki and Nadeko, I think. Um, they kind of do a similar thing, right? They project this outward personality that is very disingenuous towards like their true feelings and emotions. I think Nadeko is much further into that than Kaiki is, honestly. I think she is further down the rabbit hole, unfortunately, than Kaiki is. Kaiki, despite his best effort, is still much more emotionally genuine, and like he does things like according to his genuine feelings more than Nadeko does, right? Despite his best efforts to come up with like explanations for it and like cope for why he's actually doing it for himself, or that he's doing it for money, or blah 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 blah, right? So this whole talk of victims and aggressors is interesting. It makes you think, like, one, what does he think about himself, right? Does he think of himself as a victim? I think he kind of has to, right? If he has had this his mentality has been changed for so long based off what happened in his past. It's kind of impossible to imagine that in some way he doesn't imagine himself just a permanent victim in that way, right? Victims don't change into aggressors because like what then would you think his own evolution was, right? Like cuz he is essentially almost trying to become an aggressor to prevent himself from ever being victimized again, right? That's why he lies, that's why he scams people, all of that. Um so I guess you could say one, either he's a victim, he's always been a victim, and he himself even thinks of himself in a victim in some way, or he fools himself into thinking he has always been an aggressor, right? This idea that he truly was never victimized by his past or anything, right? That his emotional whatever emotional stuff he went through back then, he's actually not affected by that because he's an aggressor, right? He can't be a victim in that sense. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not saying that whatever happened between him and Gantoe in his past, he actually was like the victim in that sense. I just mean like emotionally, he's the victim in terms of he's being negatively affected by it, right? Not through any fault of Gantoe or anything, right? It's like it's in his own head. And that's interesting because Nadeko had like a different stance on victims and being an aggressor. She didn't want to be a victim exactly. Obviously her whole deal with like victimhood and all of that hasn't really been dealt with. Her arc as a character hasn't really been finished, right? Same with Kaiki, I suppose, right? So I guess I'm curious like where we're going with that, right? But both Kaiki and Nadeko do a similar thing in terms of being disingenuous with themselves and other people. So them meeting in this arc, which I assume they're going to, right? He has to deceive her, is going to be interesting, that's for sure. In that respect, I feel something's wrong. If I had to rephrase, it's not that I feel something's wrong, I just have a bad feeling. This errand bodes ill. Perhaps it does. I don't know. I wonder. This errand bodes ill. I guess it makes sense that he would be having like this bad feeling, because this is so against what he normally tries to do, right? It's almost like if in some way, I assume when he talks to Shinjikahara, he thinks about like what he did to her and like what that means, right? Like him, what he did, what he said to her at the end of Karen B, the whole thing about never overcoming her past, despite how horrible that advice is, I think it comes from a place of well-meaning in terms of like, I really think he does feel bad for what happened to Shinjikahara and what he did to her. Um, and I think this emotional response that he's having right now, this feeling of I don't know, just a bad feeling, is probably comes from the fact that he is now making some small step to address that in some way, right? Because despite what he says in this episode, that is certainly why he flew all the way down here to meet her, right? Like, going pretty far if he really had no intention of doing anything for her, you know what I mean? Hmm. Who's that? I said my name is Suzuki. Of course, good old Suzuki. Enough of the unnatural acting. Stop with the childish behavior already. I do like that, how we're calling him childish, because of course, right? He is childish. You know, he really is. He's not a proper adult in a way, right? So he meets her in the lobby. Well, kind of. He tells her to meet him in the lobby. It's kind of just like he needs to buy some time to get out of the airplane and go meet her. Doesn't want her to discover the deception. She could never figure it out, right? It's way too intense of a scam, of a lie, right? So we meet in a cafe. Senjugahara gets a disguise, of course. Very nice, very fancy. Good old Senjugahara. And Kaiki has to beat her by I guess he just takes this off the mannequin and puts it on. Very nice. Very, very good, Kaiki. You're looking good. You're looking good. So, we begin our conversation. It's been a while. It sure has. To think that you'd be the one contacting me. What's wrong? Something happened. Something sure has. There's someone I'd like you to deceive. Would you be up for the deception? So I guess the question is, for one, how is this plan going to work out? How are we going to deceive Nautiko? Is that even possible? Is it even possible to deceive her, Because here's the thing, right? Deceiving okay. We got to take this back, right? Like, the reason why she wants to kill Araragi and Senjugahara and everything is for this crazy reason that doesn't even make any sense, right? She is the one already deceiving herself by being a god and by doing all of this in the first place, right? We kind of almost compare the idea of being a god to deceiving yourself in this episode with the way Senjugahara compares the crab and her and Nautiko, right? Like, abandoning your humanity, abandoning like these meaningful parts of yourself, right? That was what Senjugahara and the crab was, right? There's meaningful emotions that she had, the trauma, all of that stuff that she didn't want to address, right? It's like that with Nautiko. Again, kind of to just a more extreme way, right? It's kind of everything about herself. She's so afraid of being genuine and being like a real person, right? So now she's a god, right? So she's deceiving herself to begin with for her goal of killing Aragi and Senjugahara and everyone. So can she be deceived out of a deception? Like, maybe. I just don't think that is that's going to be a good angle for it, right? I guess in my mind, the only way to solve this Nautico situation is to help her to figure this stuff out, right? Like, deceiving her isn't going to work because it is a deception she's already doing on herself, and she's not going, like, she has to hold on to it. It's so meaningful to her, right? This killing Aragi and everyone. It's so meaningful to her the same way, like, the same reason Kaiki cares about money, right? It's like trying to deceive Kaiki into not caring about money anymore, Like, that wouldn't be possible, right? It's like if Senjugahara tried to deceive him into taking this job without getting paid. Um, it's just not going to happen. It just comes from a different place than like this true belief that someone could be deceived away from, right? There's no human that I cannot deceive. Well, she's not really a human, unfortunately. But without a more concrete story, I can't give an answer. Even if you're not respectable, I'm trying to save you face as you're older than me. She's trying to like play on his, like his actual emotions and feeling that he should like, which genuinely isn't actually not really for her, but for like Nautiko because of what he did to Nautiko, right? Obviously, he doesn't care about Nautiko. He doesn't know Nautiko. What actually matters here is Senjugahara, even if Senjugahara herself maybe doesn't understand that, right? The reason he actually accepts this, even though he comes up with a bunch of crazy cope about Gain Toei and Kombu and all of this stuff, I don't believe it. He cares about Senjugahara. He doesn't want Senjugahara to get murdered, right? I don't believe the cope. Fundamentally, you have to do something of this level to begin with. Are you talking about atonement? Because I previously got you into a terrible situation, I have to make up for it. And that's what he wants to avoid so badly, right? He wants to run away from his past forever, of course. Showing growth on your part, Senjugahara. I suppose. It's It's not to make up for something you've done against me. And we get the shot of him sitting there, not really buying it, maybe? Or I just wonder internally if he's thinking about that, you know? All the pain you caused me has already been made up by Araragi. I don't think he can believe that, right? I think it's so hard for him to believe it's possible for someone to move on from their past like that in that way, because he has been unable to, right? That's splendid, not a cheap shot. How would that be a cheap shot for Araragi to have made up for the pain, right? Like what is he even talking about? Like, come on. So you're making up for something completely different, and you must do it. You must do it, absolutely. I can turn away and go home right now. And yet he doesn't, right? And yet he doesn't. He doesn't leave, you know? She says, oh, I'll stab you, right? And he says, I don't want to get stabbed. But I don't really believe him that that's his reason for, like, maybe this is what he means by deception and lies, right? Is that every action he takes and everything he says, even in his own head, he's lying to himself all the time, and he's deceiving himself. And because we're in his head, we have to cut through those deception and lies, not to us, the reader, or the you know, the viewer in this case, I suppose, but to him, right? We have to understand that he's lying to himself about his own motivations and reasoning, right? Because I don't believe him that he's so scared of getting stabbed by Shinjogahara that he doesn't want to leave, right? Like, obviously, right? He has a deeper, more emotional reason for sitting here and listening to her and thinking about her problems, right? Like, obviously, you know? I have no choice. I'll at least listen to your story. It's interesting how he kind of corners himself into this idea that he has no choice, right? Because that's what he kind of has to do, you know? Like, at the end of this episode, when he has to convince himself for a reason he can find to accept this that's, like, centered on him, you know? It's like he has to think of a reason why, in this case, he has no choice but to sit here and listen to her, you know? Go ahead, tell me, Shinjogahara, who and where do you want me to deceive? Sengoku Nadeko. So the threat of Sengoku Nadeko has been hanging over Shinjogahara and Aragi's head for, like, what, 2-3 months now? Something like that, right? I guess it was November, so it's been all of November and all of December that they've been dealing with it, right? So rough, right? That's got to be pretty hard on them to, I suppose, with that context in mind, right? The idea that the threat of Nadeko murdering them was over their heads for that whole time. That means, of course, that's something that was on Aragi's mind, I assume, during that conversation with Ogi he had at the end of the last episode, right? Which, again, maybe that just explains even more about why his mental state has become so terrible, right? Like, think about it. Hachikuji disappeared, like the best thing in his life, representative of everything amazing, right? Um, there's this constant threat of death over him at all times, which is Nadeko, right? Which in some way, like, he certainly blames himself for what happened to Nadeko, right? Like, before Nadeko ate the snake talisman, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry for not noticing all of this, right? It's the thing he always does. He accepts impossible responsibility for everything. He thinks he should have been able to do something to change the situation, right? And he was unable to, right? So he's had this constant threat, this constant reminder that, oh yeah, I'm gonna die soon, right? It's like, it's almost like he's at the end of the line, you know? It's like he's made too many mistakes and it's just over, you know? Nadeko's just gonna kill him, nothing he can do, you know? Although I'm sure he's tried to do something to, like, fix the situation, but, like, what? You know, what could he possibly do, you know? Hmm. In the first place, aren't couples supposed to do the New Year's shrine visits together? Well, and carelessly throw away money like trash. I do wonder, Nadeko did say that they weren't allowed to hold hands or do anything. So I do wonder if they just don't, if they can't right now, you know? In that sense, just like everything else, this is also represents separation between him and Shinjogahara, right? It's really just everything in Aragi's life just has to be going horribly, you know? Man, if Aragi-kun were to see you, he'd be likely to kill you. Yeah, to that hero of justice, you were a natural enemy. Very interesting, putting Kaiki on the opposite side of Aragi in terms of him being the hero of justice. I don't know. I feel like that kind of plays into Kaiki's thing in a way, right? Because again, it's like, if we are making these comparisons between Kaiki and Aragi, then it's like you have to imagine that in some sense, you have to wonder, if Kaiki is similar to Aragi in terms of the whole justice and helping people thing as well, right? He rejects it. He does his best to reject it. He tries to tell himself, oh, I'm only doing everything for my own purposes, but I don't think that's true, right? That's why he has to look for an excuse so badly. Meeting in secret, of course. In other words, you want to become an accomplice and a fraud so much that you created a secret you're keeping from your boyfriend. I have no idea who the Sengoku Nadeko is. Is she a rival for his heart or something? Like, kinda. Like, not really. She doesn't... Like, the solution for this can't be anything Araragi related, really, right? Araragi isn't really part of the solution, frankly, right? It makes me wonder, like, in what form will Kaiki's deception take? If it has anything to do with Araragi, I don't think it's gonna work. Because Araragi is like the symptom. Her connection to Araragi is like part of the problem, not the solution, right? She's not really his rival, a rival for his heart in like a way that makes any sense, you know? Because that is the interesting thing, is we have been in Nadeko's head, so we like know what's up with her more so than any of these characters are going to, you know? Although I wonder, with the similarities between Kaiki and Nadeko, I wonder if Kaiki is going to be able to like see through her in a way. I don't know. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Hmm. But it's like, as I'm saying that, it's like, is Kaiki even gonna be able to talk to her or anything, you know? Because she's a god now, right? Like, is she, I hope she doesn't just, like, murder people when they go up there, right? Like, I don't know, I don't know. Aragi studying, as always, of course, of course. Both of you will be in college in the spring. Nope. At this rate, Aragi-kun and I won't have a spring or anything after. No future. No future. Her saying no future is interesting because Kaiki is so focused on the past at all times, right? This idea of the future. I don't know. I wonder, is it something he even thinks about, you know? I mean, obviously, Kaiki says that there's no point in thinking about overcoming the past. And despite that, he's all of his motivations, the way he acts and everything is entirely from the past, right? So, paradoxically, he's actually very focused on the past, despite what he says, right? So, I just wonder this idea of the future, you know, what does he think of the future? What does he think of his own future? You know, has he really had his own future like open to him ever since whatever happened between him and Gantoe? If everything goes according to plan, are going to be murdered on graduation day. Like maybe that'll be the thing, right? Through saving their future, he will also save his own, right? Something is going against you and Aragi, and Sengoku Nadeko wants to kill both of you, and you want me to wheedle her into not doing so. Basically, that's kind of a simplistic way of putting it, but frankly, yeah, that's about it. That is a great shot. That is a really great shot. Maybe that should be the thumbnail. Murder is something far from peaceful. Very scary, very ominous, indeed. And we drop the Suzuki, calling him Kaiki. Wait, let me read that. All you have to do is listen. If you say no, then I'll give up. I'll give in and submit both me and Aragi-kun to die at her hands. If that is destiny that I can't avoid, then so be it. It's interesting that she does this, because I don't really believe her. I don't really believe that she would just give up forever if Kaiki didn't help, you know? They still got 2 months. Surely she could try something more. But it is, in a way, kind of layering on more debt and responsibility onto Kaiki's shoulders, right? This idea that if he doesn't do something, they'll both die, you know? And it works. It does end up working, you know? If I were to plead with all my heart, maybe Aragi would be spared. Unfortunately, I think it would be the opposite. I think, sadly, she would kill Aragi for sure, and never not do that, you know? Let me read these text flashes. However, oh, that's all it says. Okay. All right, I can just listen. After getting it off your chest, you might feel better and everything may work out. Sadly, that isn't how it works, unfortunately. I answered thus. Sengoku Nadeko is indeed no longer human, similar to you, Kaiki, and similar to Senjoku as she used to be, right? A god. Let's just hear her out. She has an odd disease. Kind of sounds like oddity. Odd disease. Odd disease, you know? I think that's kind of the play that they're doing here, you know? Oddity. An odd disease indeed. It's true that we were both gods. I had a crab and she had a snake. Gods kind of being like this rejection of these fundamental parts of your humanity, right? That's kind of how I imagine it. You did a job back in that town, so maybe you know that there's a shrine named North Shirahebi Shrine on top of the mountain. He lies and says he doesn't know about it. He loves to lie about random inconsequential things, of course. I love Kaiki. God. And he doesn't know who Sengoku Nadeko is, which is very interesting that he doesn't even know who she is, right? That he has had such a significant impact on her. Like what she said in, I think it was the first episode of Otori, right? Is that the person who has had the most impact on her life is Kaiki, right? And he doesn't even know who she is, right? Which is just, it's a really interesting thing because he is someone who has been influenced so much by the impact of a single person on his life, Gantoe. Shinjo Gahara is someone who has been influenced so much by his impact on her life, right? She's overcome a lot of it since then. Not that he like thinks that's even possible, I imagine. Um, so I think the idea of him having impacted Sengoku Nadeko so much, despite never having met her and not even knowing her, that's very interesting, you know? I don't really know what to think about how that connects to this idea of like single people having such an impact on your life, you know? But it makes me wonder, like, if Kaiki feels this desire to help Shinjukahara, he certainly does, right? Because of the way he's impacted her life so much, and he certainly feels bad for her, for sure, right? Um, I wonder then if he truly does feel some kind of responsibility towards Nadeko, even if he says like, "No, I don't even know her," you know, blah 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 blah, right? I don't know. It just makes you think, you know, that there was another person out there that he's had this significant of an impact on, you know. I guess he doesn't know exactly. He doesn't know, I suppose, that Sengoku thinks that he is the one who has had the most impact on her life. You know, doesn't know that yet. Maybe that'll come out, and then I just wonder. I wonder what he will think about that. You know. Yeah, she's not one that you deceived. She's an indirect victim. Which again, it's like, man, I love the theme of victims and perpetrators and aggressors and all of this, right? Angels and devils, gods and devils, my bad. Um, it's very interesting. Like, what does it mean to be an indirect victim in that sense, you know? Obviously, this is painting Kaiki as the aggressor, of course, right? And Kaiki himself, as he said, thinks you're either a victim or an aggressor, and that's it. It's impossible to change. Of course he would think that, you know? But the idea of her being an indirect victim, hmm. Like, what is the difference there? You know, like, what does that mean thematically? Like, for Kaiki, especially, because he is the aggressor in this case? I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. We'll have to see, perhaps, as the art goes on, the relationship between them, maybe. What Kaiki thinks about Nadeko as he really gets to know her, maybe. And Kaiki really gives this great, you know, his thoughts on fraud, of course. It's a menace to society, obviously. He would never do that. Can't really blame Shinjigahara. Don't treat me like a child. And then we get the shot of her like she's slouching down so much. She looks so childish, and then like he immediately calls her a child. Adults don't get upset at each mishap a child has, even though she is more of a grown up than you, Kaiki. Like, come on, in a way. You are the one who dragged Sengoku Nadeko into the world of aberrations. If you can think that, if you can think that way, don't even man-eating fiends like you feel a bit of responsibility. He does. Unironically, he does. Even though he goes on about the sarcasm and all of this, right? And the reason why is because he wants to distance himself from that. So of course he has this reaction to it where he acts so crazy and so sarcastic and so like such an asshole, right? Because that's what he wants to avoid, you know. So like in a sense, it's kind of paradoxical, right? Because it's like the more she tries to convince him to feel this personal feeling of responsibility for it, the more he wants to distance himself from it. But it does still achieve what she wants to do, which is make him feel that weight of personal responsibility, you know? Help me. I heard those words 2 years ago too. I wonder how it feels to say the same line to the same person again. Yeah, to reach for help for someone, you know? Because it's like that's what Kaiki doesn't want to do, right? It's like he's so embittered and so against being connected to other people in any way, you know, like putting his himself in their hands, anything like that, you know, especially for the same person, you know, returning to him after all this, you know. I wonder how it feels to save. I saved Shinjigahara and Araragi. That all sounded like one bad joke. The idea that he could ever do that, I suppose, you know? Since I'm not one to dislike bad jokes, put me in a pretty cheerful mood. So you're telling me to deceive a god. You claim you're the best con artist on the planet, and there's a text flash here. It's like, I did not say that. Yeah. Well, he did say he could deceive anyone, so yeah, come on. But unfortunately, the question of whether or not he can do it and whether or not he will do it are different things, sadly. And that's the real battle here. God, her face. I like how the mask she has on changes too, with like the different color schemes, you know? In the first place, I deceive people for money. Of course, he has to distance himself from it, obviously. Why do I have to deceive Sengoku Nadeko when it doesn't bring any money at all? Even if she's a god, to fool a girl in junior high makes my conscience hurt oh so much. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. And we bring it back to money. And it's like, I wonder, right? This whole money thing, it serves this purpose of, distancing himself from the situation, like, emotionally. But I also wonder if he is trying to convince her to, like, give up on it as well, right? Because he also, you know, he thinks what she's doing right now is involving herself with him, and I don't think he thinks that's, like, good, right? So I wonder if he's also trying to convince her to, like, give it up, you know? She's been looking for Oshino. Can't find him. I wonder where he is. And Hanakawa went overseas to look for him. Hanakawa's been brought up in this arc. She better show up. We haven't seen her in so long. I want to see her post-Tiger, like, so bad. But apparently all she is she has big boobs. Like, we can't... I feel like there are other things we could say about her, like how awesome she is, like how she has, like, really cool white and black hair, you know? I guess she dyes it every day, but, you know. Still, come on. Kaiki, can I at least ask a question? Do you not intend to work for free for me and Aragi-kun? As he looks away, right? He's not looking at her. It's like he can't bring himself to. To make up for what you did to Sengoku Nadeko and for the trouble you caused us. That would never happen even if heaven and earth flipped over. Yeah, he cannot, that is what he has to reject, right? He can't do that, right? He cannot tell himself that that's the reason why he's doing anything, because that opens him up to being hurt again, you know? Impossible for him. Is 100,000 yen not enough? It's not enough. Demand an amount. And it's like you know, this is the thing. It's like he can't really demand an amount because the purpose of the money isn't really for the cost or anything, right? He doesn't really care about that, right? The purpose is the distance it creates, you know? So it's the amount of money doesn't really matter, you know? If you could only spare one life, which would you pick? Your life or Aragi's? Aragi-kun, that's a given. I wonder what he thinks about that. The idea that she would give her life for Aragi, right? I don't know. 74 days until graduation. Given that much time, I can pay a lump sum of money. If I need to, I can sell my own body. And he throws his coffee in her face, thank God. Because obviously that's something very, like, obviously he would not want her to do that, right? That is very much, like, for her, like, that is such a personal, emotional thing that would, like, be horrible for her because of her past as well, you know? And I think her saying that, her being willing to go that far, I think that's what makes him be like, okay, I really have to make sure I can do this, right? Because I think he would not be able to live with himself if she actually went and did that, you know? So he has to come up with a reason to accept it other than money, you know? It's very self-centered, you know? It's very self-centered, him having to come up with a way to do these things that, like, is an excuse that, like, why he's doing it for himself, you know? It's self-centered not in, like, really in, like, a selfish way, but just in a, like, he just wants to only think about himself and, like, emotionally, like, he doesn't want to deal with other people in that way, you know? Man, do I feel like I want to work for Shinjikahara and Aragi for free? Do I feel like I can't bear to watch old rivals lose their lives in an unsightly manner? No, that would never be true. And it's like, it's not like that is untrue exactly. It's more so that's something he can't admit to himself, right? It's like, if he accepted it for that reason, then emotionally he's opening himself up too much So he has to say, no, that's not true. I can't, like, accept that as, like, a truth about myself, you know? Same for, yeah, any connection to Sengoku Nadeko, like this impact he's had on her. That's another thing, right? He can't open himself up to that level of sympathy, of course, right? Can't do that, can't do that. Nope, can't do it about Shinjo. No, 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 no way. But if it's related to Gantoe, right? What about Aragi? No, of course not. Can't do it for Karen, obviously. Even if there's change for me to give back, it wouldn't be enough. Hanakawa, he just thinks of, like, how about I be touched by a girl's admirable efforts to go overseas for the sake of her friend? Perhaps she's amazingly rich, and maybe I can wrestle some money from her parents. How many times has the idea of Hanakawa's parents being rich come up? Like, it's just not true. That's a no. It did not require a moment's consideration, nor to properly finish my sentence. No good. No matter how hard I think, I can't find a reason to accept this job, right? He needs a reason. He needs an excuse to tell himself for why he's accepting the job, right? Yeah. Not only is there nothing in it for me, but I'd end up with a loss if I accepted. And he thinks of Kanbaru, right? He thinks of this crazy chain of events where he can connect it to Kanbaru, who's connected to Gantoe, right? And he's able to do it for that, right? That is something that in some way, despite this being the genesis of the reason why he acts like this, which is Gantoe, if it has this connection to Kanbaru and this connection to Gantoe, then he's able to do it, which is very interesting, because you would think that would be something that would open him up to the past more than anything, but I don't know. It's very interesting that he's able to do it for this reason. And it makes you think maybe it's I guess you could look at never addressing the past in a different way in terms of never reaching a fulfillment about it, right? Never reaching a conclusion about it, right? The fact that he's still stuck on Gantoe for so long and still using her as motivation for his actions in this moment. It's like you could say that through doing that, it's like he still hasn't given up on her in some way, right? It's not that he hasn't overcome the past in terms of the impact it's had on him and all of this, right? And dealt with that emotionally, but he hasn't overcome the past in terms of he literally hasn't given it up. He hasn't given up Gantoe and Kanbaru and what that means for him, So he's still using it as an excuse for his motivation here for that reason, Can I save my bitter enemies, Shinjukuhara and Aragi, and deceive Sengoku Nadeko? Your bitter enemies, huh? For the sake of Kanbaru Suruga. That's a yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that was a good episode. I really love this ending. There's some very nice, visual symbolism, I think, right? We have 3 characters who I think are very similar. Araragi, Kaiki, Oshino, in terms of, being emotionally distant, kind of, being in a box, right? They're all in a box together, right? There's all this stuff on the outside that they're so separate from, right? So they're all together like this, right? And then as the music kind of swells, right? It's we get this, it's we move to this further dimension outside where it's there's all the other characters, there's everyone, everyone who has actually ended up having an impact on all these characters, you know what I mean? Hajikuji, rest in peace. I don't know, very pretty simple visual symbolism, but I don't know, it feels impactful. It feels impactful. Ononoki. I can't wait for more Ononoki. I hope she shows up in this arc. But yeah, I suppose that's it. Somehow, I still stretched out the discussion to an hour. How did I used to do the discussions in 30 minutes? How did I ever do that? I don't even know. Anyway, I guess that's it. So please, if you enjoy my videos, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you in the next one.